Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Good morning. I'm actually live on Facebook, YouTube. I'm trying to go live on Clubhouse. Okay, I'm live on Clubhouse. Yay. I just haven't gone live on Instagram. This is the first time I'm trying to go live on all my platforms at the same time. So, trying to get used to it. Anyhow, welcome to this morning's edition of Contractor's Chatter. If you were live with me yesterday, that was just a bad day. And yesterday was more of an integrity live than anything else because that was just straight horrible. But we're here. We're going to get this party started. Let me introduce myself. My name is Luciana Turner. I am the founder of the LT&A Consulting Group. We are a government contracting, consulting, and training firm. And Contracting Chatter is an up-leveled conversation around government contracting. Now, what you typically hear in the government atmosphere is a lot of conversations around proposal writing, NACE codes, finding opportunities. Chatter platform tends to put a different spin on it. We talk about appropriations regulations. We talk about compliance. I have an extensive background in compliance when it comes to government contracting. I spent 15 years as a government compliance specialist for two of the top 5 government contractors in the country. So I've interfaced with DCAA. I've interfaced with the Department of Labor. I have worked on incurred cost submissions, disclosure statements, wage and earnings audits. I've done it all. That's a part of the government contracting conversation you don't often hear because, quite frankly, a lot of the contracting experts out there just aren't familiar with it. And it's not a slight to them. Everybody knows their role and everybody stays in their lane and they talk about what they're quite familiar with. That's where Chatter was born because that is my lane. And who cares if you win the contract if you cannot sustain it? Now, the replays are on in my contracting conversation room on Clubhouse. The replays are posted to my YouTube channel, which is Contractors Conversation. Contractors Chatter is my summit. It is sort of like, I don't want to call it a news program, but it's sort of like my news program. Now, the summit, the chatter will be on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays at 7:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Contractors Conversations are my master classes. They will totally be on YouTube only. I do not do them on Facebook. I may bring them to Clubhouse, but for right now, they are solely on YouTube. So if you want to catch any of my master classes, you're going to have to subscribe either to my email list or to my YouTube channel. Now, on Clubhouse, I'm going to update my bio, which will include the link to my YouTube channel so you can subscribe. And it'll include the link to my email list so you can stay up to date on my training classes, master classes, etc. I will also include that link in my bios on my other social media platforms. So the biggest news in government contracting today is the Supreme Court's decision to block the vaccine mandates. I'm not actually surprised. If you were a listener of mine last year, I actually predicted this. Now, I'm not an attorney. I don't play one on TV, but I predicted this. And quite frankly, when the president started this, he even knew he didn't have the authority. He just, I remember Senator Biden. I grew up in Delaware, so I used to run into him quite often on the train platform. And he was, quite a people person, so he would talk a lot. And he actually came to my elementary school, and he was one that he would just do something, and when he got smacked down for it, it was like, oh well, at least I did something. So when he took up this initiative, and when he first came on the scenes with it, I believe it was back in October when he first said he was going to do this. He said then he didn't have the authority, but he went on ahead and did it. So I'm not surprised that the Supreme Court eventually stepped in, which they had to wait until the legal claim was brought to them. I need businesses, and this is a business platform, not a political one, but I want businesses to understand, or business owners to understand the process so that they can better understand appropriations, quite frankly. So that when we're talking about laws and rules and regulations, you can kind of see how they play out and the timeliness of how they will take effect. I digress. So the Supreme Court had to wait until a constitutional issue was brought before them. Quite a few people were like, well, why didn't the Supreme Court step in sooner? Because a constitutional issue wasn't brought to them. There were all these issues brought up, but none of them were constitutional issues. And the Supreme Court can only rule on constitutional issues or matters of law already on the books. The Supreme Court, in accordance with the way our founding fathers set up our system, cannot make law. And people wanted them to make law, and they can't do that. So they were waiting for somebody to pass them the ball that they can actually run with. And that finally happened. Now, there's two things about the decision that was made. People are so caught up with the mandate that they didn't really get the other part of the decision. We're going to talk about it because it does affect government contractors. Whereas the mandate per OSHA cannot be enforced. That's true. And I didn't do a deep dive into the opinion, and I'm not going to. It's not necessary for my platform. OSHA cannot force employers to do it. However, they did uphold Biden's ability to say if you receive Medicare funding, they upheld that portion of the mandate. And the reason being, if the government is providing your funding, then the government can set the rules for that funding. And there's the crux. How is this going to play out for government contractors as far as contracts are concerned? And I know DOD has put language in their contracts starting October 15th. October 15th. It was sections L and J in particular, referencing the mandatory COVID vaccination for their employers. I'm not sure about other agencies. I just remember DOD making that announcement. How does this play out in government contractors or for government contractors? I'm not sure. The ball is still in the air as far as that is concerned. This is what I would advise government contractors. If you as a business owner still want to mandate your employees to get COVID vaccinated, that is your right as a business owner. I'm not going to put my opinion on it. It's not for me to tell you to do it or not to do it. If you want to hire me as one of your consultants to help develop your policies and procedures around it, because that is something you're going to have to do. You're going to have to develop a policy. How you're going to do it, instructing your employees what it is. You're going to have to create procedures of how you're going to collect the information, maintain it, store it, who has access to it. You just can't do it and just have it laying in a desk drawer somewhere, because it's going to become, and this is something that government contractors need to be aware of, anything you do, you have to have a policy and procedure around, and it becomes an audit step. So you have to have an auditable action, and you have to have some security measures around it. So if you choose that route, then go ahead. If you choose to do testing, you still need a policy and a procedure around that. How is the test going to be administered? The last I heard, you had to give the employees time off to do it. Are you going to bring it on site? Do they have to go off site? These are the moving parts that you're going to have to still consider as a business owner. So as far as the court order is considered, there's those two parts. As far as government contractors are concerned, there's still some ambiguity out there. The coming months is really just going to shake out in the coming months. We're just going to have to see how it all rolls and roll with the punches, as they say. This is what I've always told my audience. This is what I tell my clients. You should, at a very minimum, have an attorney or retainer that you can be discussing this with. You should talk to your insurance broker. And if you don't have an insurance broker, you need one. You should not, if you are a business owner doing government contracting, be going online purchasing insurance. You need somebody that you can talk to, about your liabilities, your risks. You need that person. You should have an HR person. If not, you need to have an HR advisor. You need these people to talk to, so that when you're thinking about these things, when you're brainstorming these things, you want to take these actions, you can have a holistic perspective on what the fallout is going to be. From an insurance perspective, how does it affect your policy, or does it? From a legal perspective, if your employee wants to sue you, can they? And even if they can, it's not a matter of will they win or not. What is the headache that will result from the lawsuit? There's such thing as nuisance lawsuits. And in government contracting, hint, every time you get sued, as you grow in contracting, there is a schedule that you have to submit on a yearly basis of every lawsuit. So unless you plan on doing hit and quit it contracting, and unless you plan on being a minor player in government contracting, you need to keep your risk and your risk exposure forefront in your mind. That's what I have to say about the Supreme Court decision on the COVID mandates. I may revisit it as more comes out on it, but only if something significant comes out. Something I do want to talk about, the Sba Size Standards. Beginning January 6th, which we all know it's past that, companies will be, let me backtrack a little bit. Sba sets up size standards, which is basically your small business if you do not exceed whatever size per NAICS codes. They allow you to use annual revenues for 3 years or 5 years. Well, starting January 6th, the company has the options of choosing either 3 years or 5 years. Now, you can't flip-flop. You have to pick one and use that as a determinant of whether you're a small business. Now, here's how the SBA decides you're a small business. They take your revenue for the last 3 years, if you choose that measure, and they take an average. Say your NAICS code is 54116. I'm missing a letter, 541161. Well, then if your revenue is under, I believe it's 2.6 million, I can't remember the exact number, then you're considered a small business within that NAICE code. Now, there are some NAICE codes that go according to employees versus revenue, but for the intents and purposes of this example, we're talking about revenue. You're classified as a small business for that NAICE code. Once you exceed the revenue for that NAICE code, you are no longer considered a small business. Well, starting January 6th, you can switch from 3 years to 5 years, but you must stick to whatever term you use. So you can't do 3 years this year and 5 years next year, and then 3 years, you have to pick one. And you have to pick one to stick with one, basically, because, you can manipulate numbers. If you have a bad year 1 year and you do a larger spread, then you can play. But that's basically what the NAICE codes do. And the small business standards. So you can be a multi-million-dollar company and still be considered small business. So that is something that you need to understand when establishing NAICE codes. That is something you need to track in government contracting as you grow, as you scale. You need to track your revenue, because once you graduate or once you reach certain revenue markers, you are no longer small businesses within NAICE codes. Government contracting has several markers, several triggers. And once you hit those markers, once you hit those triggers, there are certain graduations that occur. There are certain triggers that occur that say you're no longer small business. That triggers audits. That triggers certain reviews. That triggers certain reportings. So these are things that you must monitor in addition to looking for the RFP, in addition to winning your contracts. So government contracting, which is why I established Chatter. A lot of people talk about government contracting from the perspective of looking for just a contracting opportunity, but they don't talk about the compliance aspect, and they don't talk about the triggers and reporting aspects of it. So I'm going to dial back a little bit, and then we're going to come up some more. The Office of Federal Contracting Compliance Program, that's a fancy office that on the federal level makes sure every federal contractor have all of their plans and programs and plans in place to ensure equity in the market. They will, sometime in this fiscal year, I believe they're on track to do it in third quarter this year. They're going to require all of their federal contractors to report in their portal their affirmative action plans. You're going to have to certify that you have one. Now, once they start doing that, they're actually going to start random audits to make sure that you actually have one. So if you are a federal contractor, if you're looking to do contracting on the federal level, keep that top of mind. If you don't have an affirmative action plan, you should look into creating one. Now, I'm going to say this. On the federal level, they don't care if you're a small business. They don't care about your size. They don't care about any of that stuff. Rules are rules, and they apply it across the board. So if you plan on doing business with any federal agency, you must adhere to having all of these programs in place. You should, at the very minimum, have a policy, so that as you grow and the triggers come into play, then you can trigger the programs and be able to run with them. I believe they said they were on track to announce this Q2. We're actually in Q2, so the end of Q2, the beginning of Q3. So sometime this government year, we're going to see that office announce this requirement, definitely the beginning of the next fiscal year. Now, I'm going to close out with this. The second Tuesday in February, and I don't have a calendar in front of me, and I always have one, but I don't have one today. The second Tuesday in February, the budget for fiscal year 2023 will be submitted to Congress. And that is important for government contractors because that is how our government is going to be funded. Right now, our government has a series of partial budget continuing resolutions. However, there's a push to get us back towards to an actual budget getting passed. And quite frankly, I believe, now this is a political point I'm getting ready to make, but it has a business basis. I believe that all businesses should get behind and force Congress to do their job. They should need to pass a budget and stop this back and forth nonsense. We haven't had a budget since President Obama was in office. These continuing resolutions are disruptive and it's just unnecessary. Pass a budget. With that said, every second Tuesday in February, the president submits a budget to Congress for review. They pick it apart. You will begin to see forecasts for every federal agency hit the ground in third quarter. That is when you need to start tracking your opportunities. That is when you need to start looking with an eye towards future. Government contractors looking to scale and grow. This is a bit of free coaching. You're on my platform, so you're giving me permission to coach you a little bit. Always keep an eye towards the future and an eye in the present. That's when you start tracking opportunities. Is when those forecasts hit the ground. What's going on? What's going to end? What's coming up for recompete? Where can you get in to fit in? You do not wait until that year comes to track your contracts and your opportunities. You start in the year preceding. You're going to hear a whole lot of low-hanging fruit concepts in fourth quarter. That is the wrong time to be thinking low-hanging fruit. Now is the time. So when fourth quarter comes, you'll know what the low-hanging fruit is. And with that said, I'm going to end with there are some upcoming industry days and other events. A lot of agencies are still holding them virtually, so you can log in via Zoom or whatever platform they're having. And now, the Army, anything DOD, all of their departments have extremely obnoxiously long names, but they have an event coming up March 8th. The Armed Forces Communications and Electronics Association. I'm going to create a link tree that I will put in all of my descriptions. That information will be there for anybody who wants it. I would suggest attending these industry events. They will talk to you about their upcoming endeavors. They will talk to you about what their goals are. A lot of what's going on now, there is a hyper focus on cybersecurity. There's a hyper focus on securing networks. With that said, all the corollary services are important. So even though you're not IC focused, there are other services that go along with that are going to become very critical. With the pandemic being transitioned into an endemic, there's going to be an uptick in research and development. There's going to be an uptick in biohazards disposal. There's going to be an uptick in lessons learned and strategic implementation on the state and federal level. If that is your niche, you should start positioning yourself for how you can be the answer to some problems and to some questions out there. And I'm even go here. You should start positioning yourself to be the person to let them know they should have questions. Because I'm telling you, I'm getting ready to send off a whole slew of email to a whole slew of people, because if they don't have these questions, they need to, because this pandemic taught me they were not prepared. And they should have been, because the RFPs were out there long enough so that when this hit, this should not have been such a sloppy response. But that's a personal opinion and not a business perspective, so excuse me for stating that. So I'm going to wrap this up with this. Join me on Monday. I go live on Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram Mondays and Wednesdays. I go live on Clubhouse on Fridays. Hey, Damon. I go live on Clubhouse on Friday for my weekend wrap-up. I do Q&As on Fridays on all of my platforms. If you submit the questions, you can DM me, you can email me. I will answer questions. I'm going to update all of my social media so that people can submit questions. I'm going to tell you this caveat. I will not answer business specific questions, because you shouldn't want your business information out there. And this is another bit of coaching. You should never ask a question, a proprietary question, in an open room, because you should guard your internal business systems, the way you do business. You should guard that. So unless you're in an environment like a mastermind or you're in a coaching space, you should not just be standing in a room, an open forum, saying, well, I do this and I just want to know. You should be careful phrasing questions in that manner. You should ask a question generally enough so you can get enough information to lead you in the right direction. But if you need a question answered specific to your business, you need to invest in your business and sit down with that coach or that mentor or that consultant to get the answer that you need to take you into the right direction. We need to guard our businesses. We need to guard our babies. And in government contracting, you need to guard them well. Even when you partner, there is information that you are not obligated to give to your strategic partners. And let me tell you, I worked for, I've been going on. I worked for General Dynamic, and General Dynamic and Lockheed Martin used to partner all the time. But let me tell you, there was things they didn't tell each other. There was things that was in the atmosphere everybody knew, but there's things we just didn't tell each other because it was nobody's business. That was internal information. And in small businesses, I want you guys to, you're small, but think big. Operate big. Operate in power. And in government contracting, you really need to take on that power mindset. And with that said, have a great weekend. Take time this weekend and rest. Go play with the kids, read a book, prop your feet up, and join me Monday morning at 7:30 a.m. on Instagram, YouTube, or Facebook as I go live for another edition of Contractor Chatter.